My name is Michael, and I'm refuting the claim of fact that stated that violent video games are more beneficial than harmful for your mental health. This claim is supported with three secondary points. The first one being that violent video games actually promote pro-social behavior. Two, the games help people control their emotions better, not enhance their aggressive tendencies. And three, that violent video games make your brain stronger. My conceit is that violent video games do none of these things conclusively and cannot be said to actually strongly do these things enough to say that they can be repeatable. Let's start with the first point. Violent video games actually promote pro-social behavior. While it is true that video games are generally known to be played cooperatively or competitively, it is a mistake to say that it is the same as socializing in the physical world. A study of 5,000 fifth graders showed that those that played more than 2 hours a day had increases in aggression, depression, and high-risk behavior. Not exactly symbiotic behavior with pro-sociality. Even if those that play video games talk to more people online, have more friends around the world that do not translate into actual pro-social behavior, especially for young kids. Young kids need to be outside, playing baseball, talking to people in the real world, not messaging online. Instead of playing kickball at the park after school, little Timmy's playing League of Legends and talking shit to somebody in Korea. These two things are not equivalent. The second point, that games help people control their emotions better, is equally problematic. A study done by Indiana University Bloomington showed that exposure to violent media had a negative effect on areas of the brain responsible for thinking, reasoning, learning, and emotional control. The fact that these were video games or movies or TV shows did not matter. While it may be true that playing video games 30 minutes to 1 hour a day may be good for the brain, most kids and even adults play for much longer than that. The analogy that I would use is that I bought a can of Arizona today. The serving size on that is 3 per can. How many people in here actually portion out and drink it 3 at a time? Or 1 out of 3 at a time? Yeah, exactly. There's normal people and sociopaths. In the University of Oxford study done by Andrew K. Przybylski, he found that 30 to 1 hour of gaming a day showed an increase in life satisfaction, but 3 hours a day had the opposite negative effect. When I was a kid, I spent weeknights glued to the TV playing video games, being tired and grouchy before and after. And so did a lot of my friends, so did a lot of people that play video games. The idea that playing 30 to 1 hour of video games a day is going to be either enforceable or realistic is not fully fleshed out. The third point, that violent video games make your brain stronger, is not 100% accurate. Veronica Boba, a researcher at the Douglas Mental Health University Institute in Montreal, found a correlation between the size of the striatum, a part of the brain, and playing violent video games. The striatum is a part of the brain responsible for movement and hand-eye coordination. It is the part that catches a tennis ball before you can think about it. It is a useful part of biology, but according to Veronica Boba, when people use their striatum, they have a tendency to do more drugs, drink more alcohol, and smoke more cigarettes. Boba also states that there is a negative correlation between the strength of the striatum and the strength of the hippocampus, the cognitive decision-making center of the brain. Video games may help with certain aspects of cognition, like split-second decisions, but that may be at the expense of long-term cognitive development. My conceit in this refutation is that the claim that violent video games actually promote pro-social behavior, the claim that games help people control their emotions better, not enhance their aggressive tendencies, and that violent video games make your brain stronger, are not strongly fleshed out and do not have a strong enough basis to be called fact. Thank you.
All right, the structural setup is very clear. I thought that got things off on the right track. Your argument about these supposed pro-social benefits that are produced there, you've got the good study that you cite immediately that talks about aggressive tendencies. I thought that was pretty straightforward, a piece of counter evidence. There's not really any discussion of the evidence that the advocate used. I think that's a little bit problematic. I think you should be going for that occasionally. I do think, though, however you explain some of the problems with the idea of communicating over the internet when people are playing these games, like you said, talking shit to some guy in Korea is not exactly building, pro-social kinds of things, So you're saying, in your face, die, you gravy-sucking bastard, or whatever the heck it is that people are saying to each other online. I think that that's a pretty good explanation of this is what is happening in those situations. I thought that was pretty good. You didn't really have much explanation of the advocate's evidence on this point and whether or not it was adequate, so it's mostly counterclaim on your part. The same is true on the second point, although I do think that there's a little bit of an explanation that suggests that there's this, you get some benefit, and maybe that's what the advocate was talking about from playing a limited amount. I don't know if it was the advocate's own evidence that you're citing, if it's the same source. If it was, that would be an important point to point out and say, look, the source that they used is this, I don't get what the study was. I've got a partial notation on it. I know there was a source citation on it. But they're talking about getting maybe less than an hour of activity in a day, and nobody does that kind of thing. I think you could use the statistic that talked about what the average amount of hours is that people are playing. You don't really have that there, but you do have that nice little analogy about the Arizona tea that I thought was pretty. And you're not drinking an Arizona tea, that's a Tijuana tea, or whatever it is. Yeah. But I knew what you were talking about, when you say, oh yeah, that's not one serving, that's 3 servings, but nobody drinks it at 3 different times of the day. It's not like they're putting it away or they're splitting it up between 3 friends. That's not what happens. They consume it all at once, and that's the problem with the video games. I thought you explained that pretty clearly. And then on the third point about the brain activity, I thought that was an interesting point. The negative consequences, for instance, that by stimulating this, it results in people smoking more, drinking more, taking more drugs. I thought that that's a good counterclaim, and compared to any proof that the advocate presented, I think that you've got a good reason to have some doubts on that point. So I thought it was a reasonable set of counterclaims. I think you need to attack the advocate's evidence and reasoning a little bit more, but your counterclaims are all excellent there. All right, thank you.